Nightmare. I never witnessed anything like it, and I sincerely hope it never happens here again.
What exactly did happen?
Well, my daddy was at the door, and Harry, my brother, is 20, and I was in the room with 2 or 3 of the children, and the police came from Abbey Street corner and Little James's Street corner and jammed the people in the middle, and a few boys, teenagers I would say, came into the hall, and my daddy went to close the door and he couldn't get it closed properly, so he put a big shovel, you know, a square mouth shovel up in front, you know, behind the door in front of him, and the police came up the street, and we were all huddled in a chair in the corner of the sitting room, and I could see them banging at the windows with their battens, and they couldn't break the glass. It's plate glass.
Yeah.
And about 5 or 6 of them were around the window, and they said, "We'll break the effing door down. You see, you can hear everything. There's a split in our glass in that window. It's doubled." And a few of them run at the door, and they couldn't get it broken. And for there was Harry and my daddy and Paddy Harkin, who is a neighbour, was behind the door as well. They then lifted a plank of the street and busted it through the door. It hit Harry in the leg, and they got the door opened, and the boys ran out at the back, over the back and under the lane, you know.
Yeah.
And one of them kicked my daddy into the corner of the room.
One of the
policemen. I didn't know it was my daddy at the time because the children were crying, and Freddie Budd, a neighbour, also came into the room beforehand, and he was on top of 2 of them, and I was on top of 2 of them.
What was to protect them?
To protect them, because we saw the police coming in the room. You know, once they'd kicked my daddy and we knew they would come in. Then 8 of them, just one by one, came walking around and stood from the fireplace down around the room, you know. Yeah. Meanwhile, there was 2 at my daddy then, and then 2 of them with batons. Yeah. And 2 of them started on Freddie and myself. Right enough, they didn't hurt me, but they were trying to get at Kathy, who was behind me. That's a girl, my sister, she's 16. Then the other 4 started at my daddy. That was 6 were at my daddy, and there was only 2 of them at us, you know. And there were 6 people in this corner and just my daddy alone in the other corner. Yeah. And I still didn't know it was my daddy. Yeah. And Freddie Budd, that's the neighbour, stood up and he pleaded with him. He said, "Please don't touch the children. Hit anybody, hit me, but don't touch the children." And the language they used to him was disgusting, you know. They hit him in the head and split him, and they put him between the fire guard and the chair out of the road, and they had a wee boy of 5. They didn't hurt him very bad, but they still had him with a baton, and he was only a child. And they had a girl of 10 and a boy of 12.
These are your brothers and sisters?
Yeah. That's Colette and Danny. Yeah. And Kathy was under me then, and I think when they saw the trousers, they thought she was a boy, and they pulled her by the legs from and under me in the settee.
Kathy's just at a hospital?
Kathy has just had an operation, and she has a wound in the middle of her stomach. She had an ulcer, and she had an appendix removal. Yeah. And that's why I was protecting her more so than anyone else, because I knew if they touched her stomach, they may hurt her bad, you know. Yeah. And I saw the way they were treating whoever it was in the corner, which was my daddy at the time, and I knew they would stop at nothing.
What did they do to Kathy?
So they pulled her from under me, and they put her in the fireplace, lay her just across the fireplace. And when she was taken from me, I got up, and I realised it was my daddy, and I threw myself down on top of him. And they caught the arms of my dress and pulled me away. And they practically tore my arm with the dress, you know, 2 of them. And they went on hitting my daddy in the head, and my daddy has a bald head, and you know, I could see how bad he was cut then. Yeah. And they kicked him in the stomach, on his back, and they were just hitting him everywhere, you know. So I come back up here, and I put my leg in front of Kathy's stomach, where one of the policemen was going to kick her, and I lifted my foot to kick him out of the road, you know. And the policeman behind me, who was hitting Freddie Budd, held my knee up, and the other policeman kept battering it just across my toes, you know, with the baton. But he didn't do me any harm then. It was sore just, you know. And they went on, he leant down then, they hit Kathy again. I hit her across the arm that time, and I went over and I lay flat out in front of my daddy, who was really huddled up in a ball anyway, you know. Yeah. And this time one of them caught the back of my hair and just flung me from the bottom of the settee up onto the fire guard. And the children were in the settee, they were all crying. And my daddy, the only thing, I heard my daddy shouting when he was kicked in the door, but after that I didn't hear anything. They then kicked my daddy from the corner of the settee right up on the middle of the floor, and his head was lying on the mat, face up. And they walked out, and I knelt down at my daddy, and I was really just praying over him. I thought he was dead. You know, after the beating that he had taken, I thought he never could survive it.
What sort of injuries has your father got? Where's your father? Your
Well,
father's in hospital
he
now?
is. My daddy was taken to hospital. We had to get out. We had to climb over the back, over 2 houses to get to a telephone. Harry did that and phoned the ambulance. And we had to ring it twice, and when it did eventually come, they took him away. And he's still in hospital, and he has head injuries. He has 22 stitches in his head. His eye, this eye's blackened, and the bridge of his nose, where he was wearing glasses, you know, and they kicked him. They must have kicked him in the mouth, because they split his dentures right down the middle.
His teeth?
Yeah. And we found them lying on the floor. He has a very badly bruised hand. We thought that was broken, but apparently it's not. It's just badly bruised. And his wrist, his arm, his elbow, you know, and his shoulder. And he was bleeding internally.
Yeah.
But I think they've got that. Whenever the police went out, Harry came in here, and he found these bullets on the floor. And these glasses were found at the front door.
Where did these bullets come out of?
The policeman, they must have come out of the policeman's pocket.
Yeah.
You know? Because it was just when the police went out that we had found them.
Yeah.
And these
what
glasses,
about these glasses?
look at the blood in those.
Blood? Yeah.
That's blood completely over the glass in those. And that's it. We don't know where the rest of it is.
Yeah. Well, those belong to?
Those are Paddy Harkins. He
That's
was
another
behind
man.
the door. That's another neighbour. He was behind the door with me, Daddy. But they only struck him once in the hall. They kicked him out onto the street, and they nearly murdered him outside the window. They then said, I was sitting on here, and Harry, I didn't hear this, but Harry heard it. They said, put the effer out in the road, and they kicked him in the road and beat him into the side of the pavement.
Yeah.
And his face is just disfigured, you know.
Yeah.
He's so badly hurt. But although he wasn't detained in the hospital, but he's at home and very bad, you know, I think if he was taken in again, I wouldn't be surprised, because he got an awful lot of
So that's
kicking too.
your father seriously injured, your neighbour Freddie Budd,
And
Paddy Harkin,
Harkin.
Kathy, and the children were struck as well.
Yeah.
Well, what exactly did they do to Kathy now? Tell me that again.
Kathy, whether they thought she was a boy or not, or why they were so interested in her, they really went out of their way to get Kathy.
Yeah.
And
this is the girl.
This is the girl who has had the operation.
Yeah.
She's 16. And they beat her in the legs and her back and her shoulders, her arms, you know. And they did hit her, you know, everywhere, I think, but she has a lot of bruises with the battens, and they used battens at all times. The only time they used their fists was on me, and they didn't mark me then, was when I was lying on top of my daddy. They didn't use a baton on me at that time.
Yeah.
But they used a baton on Kathy, and they used it with their whole force.
Was your mother in the house, sir?
My mommy was in bed sick at the time. She had been in bed since Friday, and she had Caroline, a baby of 3, she's the youngest, and Christine, who's 7.
Your mother hid them?
They were in the bedroom with me, mommy.
Yeah.
And there was a man on the stairs, and my boyfriend was on the stairs, Hugh.
Yeah.
You know Hugh.
Yeah.
They were standing, and Harry was with my daddy.
Yeah.
So, like, only for them, I think we may all have been massacred, because I'm sure if they had seen my mommy in bed, they would have just fell to her the way they did with us.